Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode on the Unleashing Potentials podcast. My name is Bernadette Desir, and I'm your host. And joining me today is Cody. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's been raining here, but it's slowly slowing down.
Well, I
Yeah.
hate to break it to you, but we've got some like beautiful weather. It's like sunny. It's like, 70 degrees. It's great. So
Oh,
hopefully
wow.
you'll get there soon. So
Eventually. Yeah, we'll
yeah.
get there. Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to the podcast, Cody. Happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you. I've been looking forward to it. So I'm excited to
Oh, you
jump in.
have. That's awesome. Yeah.
Mhm.
To start, can you tell us where about are you tuning in from?
Yeah, so I'm in Toledo, Ohio. It's a smaller major city in Ohio. I think that the most recognizable city would be like Detroit, Michigan. It's probably like an hour
Oh,
south of Detroit, Michigan. So
oh, okay, okay.
mhm.
Nice, nice. So Cody, what do you do there?
So I'm a financial coach. I have my own financial coaching company, and I help people, like get themselves out of debt, amplify their savings, get started with investing or buying real estate. But I take a really think what is unique about what I do is I put a really big emphasis on like the money psychology side of things. So, like how it affects people mentally, emotionally, even relationally with like their marriages and stuff like that. I found that that's really, really important. So I put a big emphasis on that.
Ooh, that's awesome because it's so connected.
Oh, it's unreal.
Yeah,
Unreal.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think often people who do help others manage money and educate them, they don't always tap into the mindset of money.
hmm
Yeah, yeah. What was it like for you growing up? Did you always wanted to do what you're doing right now?
Not at all, actually. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I actually grew up in Michigan. And I grew up like on a farm, like 35-acre farm. And that was a really cool experience looking back at it. I definitely got my work ethic from working on the farm as I was growing up. But as I was growing up, I wanted to be everything but a country like farmer guy.
Yeah.
So I went in the total opposite direction and said, you know what, mom and dad, I'm gonna rebel and I'm gonna be in a band and I'm, like all these different types of things.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I ended up going into the music industry for about 10 years before I actually
Oh, wow.
started doing what I'm doing now. So that journey from the music industry to this is quite interesting, but that's kind of where I came from.
Yeah, those are very different. They're opposite.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What did you do? Were you in a band? Did you sing? What did you do musically?
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, I mean, I could just tell you like the journey of like the transition from music to financial coaching. Would that be
Yeah,
good?
definitely. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. So it's a little bit of a story. So, I started off playing in the band and I was the guitar player. I wrote most of the songs and things were going actually very well for us. We were touring across the country. I think we played like 46 out of the 48 continental United States. And we were doing that for like, 8 months out of the year. And we were
Mhm.
playing, we were recording with like a multi-platinum record producer, playing all the biggest festivals. Like it was really good. But one thing that really was not good on my end was my personal finances. I had like a lot of debt. I had no savings at all. And, it basically led to me living off of that, living in the van, basically off of like $3 to $5 a day,
Mhm.
which was just enough for me to buy like, a banana, a can of Chef Boyardee ravioli, and I'd eat it cold kind of thing. Like the
Mhm.
classic, like starving artist kind of thing.
Mhm.
And at first, I really embraced that, but after a while, it just really started to catch up with me. Um, and it wasn't sustainable. So I remember that there was one night in I think we were in like the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma, and it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. We were just driving through trying to get to the next city, and we stopped at this gas station to fill up, and get some food, whatever. And I've opened up my wallet and there was no money in it. And I was like, okay, I'm used to that. There's probably something on my card though. Let me just check and see what I have. Um, Credit card's maxed out, and my debit card only had $1.03 on it. And I just had this moment where I was like, I can't keep doing this. And like this like pit in my stomach just started to like grow, and I could hear like the fluorescent like bulbs of the gas station, like I could hear them like and like just growing in anticipation. And I just went into our trailer and I closed the door to just get some like alone time. And I just remember putting my head in my hands and just saying like, I am never ever going to allow money to dictate my life anymore, because eventually I had to give up. I had to let my dream die because of money. So I went on like this like revenge tour with money. You know, I was like, I'm not letting you control me anymore. So I went in and just started learning every single thing that I could ever learn about it, got my situation cleaned up. And then I had this moment where I was like, there are other people who have their own dreams or their own goals that I know for a fact are probably being held back by money, or they feel like they can't do it because they don't have the money to do it. And I don't want anyone to experience what I did, So that's when I just decided to launch Sizemore Financial Coaching. And, that was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And the rest is history. It's been growing every year, been helping more and more people. And it's been a really, really rewarding track to get there. So long story short, that's how it all kind of came about.
Oh,
So,
wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's awesome.
yeah.
And I think you just described probably 80 to 70% of what many people are going through around the world. And that's almost including the third world poor countries, right? That doesn't necessarily have a bank card, doesn't know how to manage it. Even in wealthy countries, I'm sure you've worked with lots of people who continue to struggle to save. It's living in a lack mindset. And at times it's not in our control. I've
Yeah.
had my fair share with it as well. I'd love to hear your thought with finance and psychology. How do you combine those together, and why do you combine them?
Yeah, it's interesting because people will think like I hear people say all the time, all I need to do is just make more money and then, things will be good, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, I work with people who make, 20, 30 grand a year. And I also work with people who make 300 to $400,000 a year.
Yeah.
And they're all dealing with the same thing, So it's like more money doesn't necessarily mean that your problems are going to be solved. And that's when I kind of realized, when I first started doing this and I started seeing like what people were bringing in, and it was the same issues, no matter what the income level was. I was like, there has to be something else going on here. And a lot of it has to do with their relationship with money. Um,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that happen to people, whether it be when like they're growing up or, as they're just going through their lives, that shape the way that they view money, the way that they believe what they can and can't do with money, their spending habits, their behaviors with it, all those different types of things. And if you're able to understand some of those things that are maybe like disempowering you or they're working against you, and you're understanding it to a level of like not just what is going on, but where is it coming from, like what's triggering you, why is it happening, then you actually have the opportunity to like process it and heal from that stuff and transform it into something that's actually serving you, right? And when you do that, then all of a sudden the money just starts working for you. And all of a sudden, like, the question I hear people ask all the time is like, where's all my money going?
Mhm.
all of a sudden you know what's happening with it and you're in control of it. It's not in control of you and it's working for you. You're not working for it. And all those classic cliches that you hear people say all the time. But
Yeah.
that's like the real thing is like once you get the money psychology figured out, then the
Mm.
money actually starts falling into place.
Yeah. Yeah. Money has so much power.
Hmm. It's an
It
energy. It really
yeah,
is.
yeah, it destroys so much and it
Mhm.
can build so much. It depends on who has it and how they're using it.
I'm really glad you
Let
said that.
Yeah, 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 go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm really glad you said that because I always tell people, because I talk to people a lot of times and they'll say things like, you've heard that cliche of like, oh, well, money is the root of all evil, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's not. It's actually misquoted. It's the love of money is the root of all evil, first and
Mm,
foremost. But
yeah.
money is not inherently bad. It's
Mhm.
actually just an amplifier of what's already there.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
someone's a bad person and they win the lottery, they're gonna be a really bad person. You like they're gonna spend their money on like selfish things, they're gonna
Yeah.
do horrible things to people, whatever.
Mm,
But if you're a good person and you win the lottery, I mean, you're gonna be a really, really good person. You know what I
mhm.
mean? Like, so it's an amplifier. It's not inherently bad.
Yeah, definitely. What are some common habits that you've seen, with the work that you do with some clients? Is it from childhood or something happened when the spouse left? There are so many triggers and so many directions we could go. But what have you seen so far?
Yeah. Well, like you just said, there are a lot of different directions that you can go. Personal finance at the end of the day, it is personal, so every person has their own unique situation going on.
Yeah.
But I will say that there is a few like common trends that I see. One of them is actually people just trying to get a sense of control over their
Mhm.
lives. And what
Yeah.
I mean by that is maybe it has to do with something how they grew up.
Mhm.
Maybe they grew up with, a family that really didn't have a lot and they were told no a lot because
Mhm.
they just couldn't buy the things that they wanted and their friends were able to, but they couldn't, right? Maybe they grew up in a broken family with, divorce, and they had to go through that at a young age. Maybe they grew up with an abusive family member. Maybe it was alcoholism or domestic violence or whatever it may be. Nothing to do with the money at all, just the situation. There's a lot of those situations where, as we're growing up, we don't really have control of the cards that we're dealt, right?
Mhm.
And because of that, we live that childhood into adolescence, into early adulthood, feeling
Mhm.
like nothing is in our control. Like we don't have this ability to, determine our destiny. It's just, this
Yeah.
is the cards that we were dealt, kind of thing.
Mhm.
So once we become adults, we move out, we start
Mhm.
making our own money, we get our
Yeah.
big boy, big girl job. Now
Mhm.
we have this sense of like, this is my life and I can do what I want and I'm going to do what I want simply because I can. Not necessarily that
Mhm.
I should, but simply just because I have the ability to do it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's that very thing that they're looking for, which is that
Mhm.
sense of control,
Mhm.
that actually puts their finances out of control. And that's something that I see all the time, all the time. And when people kind of come to terms with that, they're like, wow, I'm actually just trying to fill this void or this need that I have, but it's actually putting myself in that situation again, except this time I'm willingly doing it to
Mhm.
myself.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they realize that and they're like, yeah, I'm done
Mhm.
with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. How do you think our culture help us financially? Meaning connecting it with mindset, right? Because someone may live beside a rich neighbor, what they drive, what they wear, but they don't know the inside story. They can only see what they want to show people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that whole idea of like keeping up with the Joneses, right? Um, we
Yeah.
we have a culture that is rich with that.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
um, and even social media, like the majority of what people post on social media is basically a highlight reel. Most people don't share their struggles. You do get your fair share of that, but most of
Mhm.
that, when they do that, it's not in a sense of like, please help me. It's more so of a sense of like, look at how bad I have it kind of thing,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? But the majority of what's on social media is just highlight reels, taking trips, going shopping, going to the baseball game, going out for drinks, like whatever it may be. And on the surface, you look at that as a consumer and you're like, man, all these people are they're living their best lives. They're going out to dinner, they're driving this new car, they got this new house. And
Mhm.
it looks like you're doing something wrong. It
Yeah.
feels like you're doing something wrong.
Mhm.
But what I can say is that I talk to those people that
Mhm.
post these things and
Yeah.
that, I see them. And like I said, like there's people who make great incomes who
Mhm.
are broke. Like they don't really have anything. And
Yeah.
it sucks to say, but like, they put in all that work, they work really, really hard, but they have really not a lot to show for it. And it's
Yeah.
just one of those things that like on my end, I kind of see behind the veil. I get a peek
Mhm.
behind the curtain a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's really easy that to see who's kind of there's this old saying that says, when the tide goes out, you can see who's skinny dipping kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah.
And it's just like, hey, if one thing goes wrong, then this
Mhm.
life that you've kind of like constructed to be and be seen as is like this amazing thing can come
Mhm.
crashing down, right? And sometimes that's all
Mm.
it takes is just one wrong thing. And
Mhm.
that's the case for a lot of people. Not everyone, of course, but I would say the
Mhm.
majority. But it's fueled by our culture of just trying
Yeah.
to put on this facade.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what gets to me. It's not that people don't deserve what they work for, but what's the show about? And
Hmm.
what are those people doing to help those who doesn't have enough to get them?
Hmm.
And don't get me wrong, there's lots of companies that are doing amazing work around the world, and you can actually see where the money is going. The problem
Hmm.
is when the people who have the money, they don't see where it's going or what's happening. Um, an example would be people who spend a lot. Is
Hmm.
it at this point something medically wrong on a mental level, mindset? Um, I wouldn't know the proper diagnosis or condition of it, but there are people who want to spend, spend, spend. It feels good to just
Hmm.
spend. Yeah. Yeah. What are your
It
thoughts?
it's so there's a lot of different types of spending, like, or spenders
Mm.
rather. So like there's
Yeah.
people who spend out of boredom. There's people who spend what I would call like emotional spending, which is like,
Mm.
they feel depressed or anxious about something, so they spend to make them feel better. Like they get that like dopamine hit kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like a drug.
Mhm.
Um, and then, there's even different types of savers. Like there's
Mhm.
savers who want to save to build something. There's savers who want to save for the sake of scarcity because they're afraid that everything's going to be taken away from them,
Mhm.
or that they're going to lose everything if anything goes wrong. And I think a lot of it just has to do with like how you were raised, what you're around, and even like your current circumstances too. But
Mhm.
going back to what you had said about um, the people who do make good money, why they
Mm.
spend it as compared to like, making a greater impact and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't think that like on the surface that they're thinking, oh, well, this is just about me, me, me. You
Mm.
know, like
Yeah.
I'm just gonna spend, spend, spend. I think
Mhm.
that people, generally speaking, I think that people are generally good,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think that, if someone really were to put the thought that like, hey, I could be giving back, I could be making an impact in some way, whether it be financially related or not,
Mm.
that they would,
Mhm.
I just
Yeah.
don't know if that's like the front of mind because of our culture, like they see everyone else doing everything and under the sun, and they just think like, oh well, if I can't do that, then I must be doing something wrong. And if I'm
Yeah.
doing something wrong, that means I'm behind. So if I'm
Mhm.
behind, I don't have the ability to give,
Yeah.
to give back or make that impact. So it's almost like they're creating their own false sense of scarcity. Um, but they're
Mhm.
putting themselves there by
Yeah.
spending and spending and spending and overextending themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Let's talk about budgeting. uh,
Hmm.
it's so expensive to live in a more developed country. I'll give you an example. When I tell people this, they don't believe me, but they can ask my family or people who are from my country. We pay rent once a year. Uh, there are places you pay every month, but how I grew up, you pay it once a year. And
Wow.
I think it was $1,000, right? And then
Hmm.
here, I'm paying more than that every month.
Right.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've had to bridge and connect those two cultures and spending habits. I still struggle. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I don't. I do.
Mhm.
I struggle with spending, with saving, especially as a single mom with kids who always
Mm.
need stuff. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Just like on the idea of budgeting in general.
Yeah, yeah. Also parenting and spending. Those two. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So that's a really good question. So I'll
Mhm.
start with the budgeting in general, and then
Yeah.
I'll kind of
Yeah.
transition into the parenting.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, especially with what's going on now, there's a lot of inflation. Like we
Too
can't
much.
deny that. There's a ton of inflation,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
getting tighter and tighter and tighter for everyone, myself
Yeah.
included, in my family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but what I will say is that like I talk to people and they say like, "Oh, I'm living paycheck to paycheck."
Mm.
But then we kind of take a deeper dive into what's
Mhm.
actually going on and what their expenses actually are.
Mhm.
And I have found that people actually have way more money than they actually think that they do.
Mhm.
The issue is that they just don't know how to handle it in a way that's actually serving them, right?
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
I am not that type of person, and there's a lot of these people who will tell you that, like, hey, if you're trying to get yourself out of debt or you're trying to save money, whatever goal you're working on, then
Mhm.
you shouldn't spend any money. No, you shouldn't go out to eat, you shouldn't take a vacation, all that kind of stuff. There's a ton of people like that. That is not me. I think that that's going to destroy your relationship with money. It's going to create this like scarcity mindset that there's never enough kind of thing. And once you do get yourself out of debt or you do get that savings goal in place, you're going to basically be at this place where you've conditioned yourself to tell yourself, I can't spend money over and over and over, to where when you
Mhm.
finally get to the point where you quote unquote can,
Mhm.
you're not going to feel like you can. You're not going to enjoy it. And then it's like, well, what the hell did you do all that for? You know? So it's a
Yeah.
weird thing. It's a weird thing. So that's why I think that it's really important to keep in mind that you should be intentional, yes, on your goals, but you should
Mhm.
also be intentional on your values as well
Mhm.
at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't care if it takes you an extra 6 months to get out of that debt, if it means that you're gonna, have a really rock solid relationship with money, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, budgeting in general, that is one thing that I've found is that, people have a lot more than what they really realize. It's really just about figuring out like what works best for you and then just getting some things in place that are like systematic, that keep you in check, like they hold you accountable, but they also give you permission to spend money without feeling guilty or questioning it at the same time.
Mhm.
And there's ways to do that. So it's just about putting it in action.
Yeah.
And then to go to your question about the parenting, so I'm actually going to
Yeah.
ask you a question.
Hmm.
What do you want to know most about that? Being a single mother yourself, I'm sure. You're probably wondering, like, what's he got to say about this, right? So give me something specific and I'll go into that.
Okay, I shop at the thrift store. Judge me on that. It's just that kids, they always want stuff. They grab us stuff. What I would want
Yep.
to know is how to be sneaky and a healthy way to put some stuff away and leave it there and not touch it. Because I've had to go back into my savings because, oh, he needs another pair of shoes. He grew out of that. Oh, another jacket. Because we have the 4 seasons here, which is hellish for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say that's what I want to know, how to save and spend. Healthy spending habits within parenting, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. So there was really two questions I heard there. One was like, how do you save and spend for as they're growing up and doing their
Yeah,
needs,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then the other question is like, well, they always want stuff. So how do I handle that?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Okay. All right. So how to save and spend. One thing that I would suggest is just looking at your overall situation and kind of like doing like an audit on yourself and seeing like where the expenses are, how much you make, all that kind of stuff, right? And something like clothing. So you mentioned the 4 seasons, right? There's clothing for the 4 seasons. They're growing kids. There's certain seasons for the kids in general, like going back to school, where you're going to spend more on clothing, right? So it might be something to where like when you do spend money on clothes, maybe you spend like $200, let's just say, and you do that like once every 3 months, right?
Mm,
Let's just say that that's like an example. So if you were to do that, that's like $800 a year. And if you were to divide that by 12 months, that basically comes out to like $65 a month, right?
mm,
So something you could do is you could just set aside $75 a month kind of thing.
mm,
Um, and that's just every month. So there might be a month where you don't spend money on clothes and it just sits. And another month comes and you don't spend any money on clothes, then it gets up to 150. And then the next month comes, you put another 75 in there and it's at 225, but then now you gotta go buy some clothes. Well, you got 225. So then go buy the clothes and it doesn't feel like a $225 purchase. It just feels like a normal month, you know?
mm. Yeah.
So just breaking it down to where like you have all these different little savings for different areas in your life in one account that you kind of just keep track of, you know? That's something called a sinking fund, actually. So I do that with my family. I do that for uh, clothes. I do it for Christmas. I do it for car repairs, home repairs, all these different types of things that I know are going to happen, but maybe not every single month.
Mm,
Does
yeah,
that make sense?
it does. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sinking
Yep.
fun. I like that.
Yeah. I don't know why it's called sinking fund, but it
Yeah.
is. So,
Well, we're sinking. I was I was talking to a friend last week, and
mhm.
the price of food is ridiculous. So
Yeah.
I told her I'm gonna go on a vegan diet because there's enough grass outside. There are trees.
Yeah.
It's so expensive. And that's
Yeah.
most of my money goes towards groceries.
hmm
And it
hmm
hurts so much to
Yeah.
spend 500 on groceries for kids.
Yeah.
It's painful. So
Yeah.
painful.
It is. It is. And there's a ton of different things you can do with groceries. But I mean you can only do so much. Like you can't cut
Yeah,
back on food
I
all the
know.
way. Like you need
Yeah.
food. So yeah.
Not if you have, if you have kids, even if you don't have kids, you got to eat.
Yeah.
And I know
Yep.
it's more expensive with kids. They're
hmm
always hungry.
Especially growing kids. Like you said, they're always hungry.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yep.
Always. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
But to
yeah.
go towards your other question about the kids always wanting things.
Yeah.
Um, there's several different ways I can go about this. Maybe I'll just touch on a few.
Mhm,
Um, you know, we as parents, we want to make the kids happy. We
mhm.
just do. It's in our blood.
Yeah.
Um, but what's important to know is that like, and I'm not saying this is you, I'm just speaking in general,
Mm,
right? To maybe
yeah,
someone who's listening even.
yeah,
Um, let's say if there's someone who has a situation to where things are kind of difficult. They don't have much in savings, they don't have much in retirement, and they have a decent amount of debt, right? And a
mhm,
lot of the debt is consumer debt, whether it be credit cards, cars, whatever it may be.
yeah,
If they don't get that under control, and they're putting a lot of their extra money into doing things for the kids, whether it be buying them something at the store, taking them on, trips, or, getting them into every single travel sport under the sun kind of thing. Um, you know, eventually you're going to be pouring so much love into these kids, financially speaking, while at the same time either keeping yourself stuck or possibly even digging yourself into a deeper hole. And you're aging. So eventually what's going to happen is that like you're going to get to an age to where you can't work anymore. And maybe your situation isn't cleaned up. Maybe you still have the debt. Maybe you don't have enough money in your retirement to be able to retire.
Yeah.
And at some point, someone's going to have to clean it up for you. Someone's going to have to take care of it for you. And who's that going to be?
Good question.
The kids.
Yeah.
The kids. So is doing all this stuff now while you just kick the can down the road to then become almost like a burden to your kids, is it actually loving?
Yeah.
The answer is probably not. Probably not. I think that you'd want to give them a good childhood, and then, make sure that their adulthood is something that they can remember you by and have you leave this earth by, to where like they aren't worried about anything. They can just remember those last few days that they spend with you as being some of the most memorable, amazing days possible,
Yeah.
And that's what I think true financial love is, right? So you have to kind of find that balance. And sometimes it just means telling the kids no, and I'm not saying to be a dictator by any means. Like the kids should have fun, and you should do things for the kids. But it's okay to say no. It's actually healthy for the kids to say no because it provides them an opportunity to understand what the real world actually is. Like the real world tells us no all the time, so if we raise kids who never get told no, and then they
Yeah.
go into the real world, they're gonna be like, what the heck? They're not
Yeah.
gonna be prepared for it,
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
good and it's healthy to tell those kids no from time to time.
Yeah.
And one thing that I do with my kids is, they do chores around the house, and we
Yeah.
pay them for that. Like some chores are $1, some chores are $3, some chores are $5. Just kind of depends on the chore.
Yeah.
And I give them cash for it, and we call it not an allowance, but we call it a commission instead.
Yeah.
And we give them cash, and we actually tell them like, hey, you're gonna have 3 different envelopes for this cash. You're gonna have a spending envelope, you're gonna have a saving envelope, and you're gonna have a giving envelope, because that's the 3 things that you can and should do with money at all times. Spend it, save it, and give it, right? So let's say that they make $15 in a week, let's just say. We wouldn't say, put all 15 in your spend. That's not a good idea. We also wouldn't say, put all 15 in your save. That's not a good idea either. We would say, hey, put 5 in your spend, 5 in your save, and 5 in your give, and only use it for those things, right?
Yeah.
And that way, like the kids are growing up and they're spending their money that they earned in a way that actually like is healthy, in a way that they actually feel really good about. So my daughter, she's 9. She spends her spend money, and she does a really good job at that. She loves spending it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But she also saved up $200 and bought her own Nintendo Switch. Now,
Wow.
we could have bought the Nintendo Switch for her, and we even asked her, we said, do you want us to pay for half of it? Because it's a big purchase. And she goes, no, I want to pay for it.
Wow. Yeah.
I think it's just because she knew that she did it. Like it gave her that sense of accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
When her friends have birthday parties, she buys the gifts for the friends. And it means more because it's from her. She gives to the church as well. And it means more because it comes from her, right? So just having the ability to allow the kids to do what they want with their money under like those guidelines of like, let's spend some, let's save some, let's give some, it really does help with like what you said, like, well, the kids want these things all the time. Cool. Have them earn it,
Yes.
and they'll feel a lot better about it. Guarantee it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, my daughter, she has her own bank card under one
Hmm.
of our names, and yeah, her dad puts money there, I put money there, and she just itches to go to the mall.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I'm like, that's your money. You spend it how you want. And when the money's done, I know. And then
Hmm.
I don't give her any more than what she's allowed to have every month.
Yeah.
It's not to make her suffer, it's to make her learn that she needs to save.
Yeah. And there's limitations too. You know, like if you spend all your money, you don't have any more money. Like that's real life, sweetheart. You know, like
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I've talked to her about that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Let's talk about those companies. I don't have a, is it debit credit card? I don't have any of those. I know lots
Well,
of people do, but they have a way of drawing people in. They
mhm,
give you offers. They make it look good, all right? So people can
mhm.
just get it. How can people educate themselves before they get themselves into a hole?
So are you talking about credit card companies or are you talking about debt relief companies?
Oh, both. I haven't heard of the second one. Let's touch on both.
Okay, well, the debt relief companies we're going to open up a can of worms, but I'm glad that we're going to. So, um,
All right.
yeah, so with the credit cards, yeah, like they have all these like bonuses and cash back and points and all this kinds of stuff, right? And it becomes very attractive to people. It's almost a game, you
Yeah.
know? People are like, well, how much can I spend to earn back what I spent, right? The answer is you're never going to earn more than you spend from credit cards. You know what I mean? Um, and then, there's those people who would be like, well, what if I just do it responsibly? Right?
Mhm.
Like I only spend so much on it and then I'll get the points and everything like that, right? And I think that's how a lot of people start off their relationship with credit cards. They're like, I'm never going to carry a balance, like I'm always going to pay it off. But then something happens in life and then one thing leads to another and then the next month happens and you're like, oh, I'll get to it next month, and then another thing happens that month and then it just starts to snowball. And then you wake up and you're like, holy cow, wait a second. I've got 5 grand on this card and it's charging me 29% interest and I don't even care about the points anymore. Like this sucks. I keep making this payment and it keeps going up in balances. Like what's going on? Um, so yeah, it's you have to think about it in the sense of like, well, what's the benefit for the credit card company to even think about offering these rewards? Why would they do it? Like if they knew that every person was going to take advantage of them, would they do it? If they knew that half of the people were going to take advantage of them, would they do it? No.
Yeah.
They know that the majority, the great and vast majority of people are not going to take advantage of them, but instead the other way around. That's why they're like a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? So it's a trap. It's a lure. And I'm not anti-credit cards, just so you know. I think that there are
I
credit
am.
card people. You are?
I,
Okay.
I just I don't know. I was raised in a different culture and country. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. So I'm not anti-credit cards because I think that like you can take advantage of some of those rewards and it can be good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with like America or Canada, like especially America, having a good credit score is important. Now, is it the most
It
important
is.
thing? No. But is
Yeah.
it important? Yes. Um, so I'm not anti-credit card. I just think that there are credit card people and then there's not credit card people.
Yeah.
And I think that the vast majority are not credit card people. Once you really get your finances into an awesome place to where like you know exactly what's going on, you're really intentional, you're really disciplined, you're very consistent, and you dot all your I's and cross all your T's, then it might be okay to introduce a credit card. Not 10, but
Mhm.
maybe a or two, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just, you're consistent with it just like how you are with your other money kind of thing. I
Hmm.
think that's fine.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, yeah, like I'm not a huge fan of them. I'm just not totally like anti credit card,
Hmm.
if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. I have my reasons, so don't message me, people. Send me letters of send me good stuff, not the bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's my reason. I grew up in a very, very screwed up, dysfunctional family and household. There
Hmm.
was always some lack of. I remember almost starving to death, which I don't talk about much.
Wow.
We just never had enough of it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
coming to a different country, I think immigrants especially, they do need the educational education, financial education. All right,
Yeah.
because they don't know. They don't know the system, how it works, how it's set up, what they need to pay back. All they know, hey, there's money in this card and I can spend, spend, spend.
Right.
But what are the consequences of them not being educated or just spending away? Right, that's kind of where I'm coming from when I say I'm anti, because there's not enough education and people are just getting buried in debt for reasons they don't know.
Well, I think that that's the point. So even in America,
Yeah.
um, there is very little, if any, financial education in our school systems. And I
Ooh,
think it's
you're
intentional.
right.
I think it's intentional, you know,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
one of those things where it's like if you don't know anything, then you'll
Mhm.
just, take the bait and you'll be a part of that system. And then they'll just slowly milk you for years and years,
Mhm.
lining their pockets while you continue to struggle. And it's like, okay, well, usually for people, like the only people that they can actually learn from,
Mhm.
unless they hire someone, would be their parents.
Yeah.
And I mean, who's to say that their parents know anything? They
Hmm.
probably don't, you know? And money's a taboo
Yeah.
subject, like most people don't talk about it.
Oh
And I
yeah.
think that I think
Yeah.
that that's intentional too, which we
Yeah.
need to like break that mold because like if we're not talking about it, then how are we going to learn? So
Yeah.
all of these things are in place to keep you under the thumb of
Yeah.
just losing money and interest, staying in
Yeah.
debt, and lining the pockets of corporations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even our own government does it with student loans. Like it's super predatory, like
Ooh,
super predatory.
those. Oof.
Yeah, really, really bad.
Those
So
are awful. I gotta pass on those. But
yeah, yeah. I
ooh.
will say, since we're on this topic,
Yeah.
I feel like I need to talk about that debt relief thing because you
Yes,
said you
yes,
never even
please
heard of
do.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's these companies out there that you'll see certain ads for that will say like freedom debt relief
Mm,
or peace debt relief or whatever it might
yeah.
be, right? And basically like they draw you in because they're like, oh, we can get rid of all your debts super super quickly and you won't need to pay like all the
Yeah.
money and all this kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
So what they do is they tell you, hey, let's say you have $100,000 worth of debt, right? They'll say, well, we can get you out of debt and you'll only need to pay around like 50 to 60,000 instead of 100,000. Sounds
Mm,
nice, right?
yeah. Tempting.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right. So
Yeah.
what they do is they take over your debts
Mm,
and then they don't pay on them. You pay them every month to manage your debts, and
mhm.
then they don't pay on these debts and they allow them to go into default or into collections. And
Oof.
then after it goes into collections, they then negotiate with the collectors
Yeah.
and they work on buying down and settling your
Mhm.
debt for a lesser amount.
Yeah.
So yes, you're paying less to get the debt paid off, but in the process of doing that, if you have $100,000 worth of debt go into collections, your credit score is going to be royally destroyed,
Mm.
like
Yeah.
royally destroyed. And that makes it
Yeah.
really difficult to buy a house or do really anything. Even some jobs will ask you about your credit score, depending on the industry, right? So it's really, really difficult. It's basically like what it does to you financially speaking is basically slightly better than bankruptcy. But they paint it as like this amazing thing, but it destroys you in the long run. And it's really difficult to get that back up. You know, it takes years of like perfect behavior with your finances to get it built back up. So that's why I really don't like those, is like
Mm-hmm.
they're wolves in sheep's clothing, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That kind of stuff gets people in psych wards.
Yeah.
Like it's bad. I appreciate you talking about what you do on so many different directions that we need to hear, especially psychologically.
Mhm.
We don't talk about that enough, I find. Maybe I could be wrong. I just don't think we do, because you talk to people about money, they do taekwondo and they just block you, right? What are
Mhm.
your thoughts? It's so sensitive to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I actually just so I had a call this morning with
Hmm.
someone,
Yeah.
and she was actually became a new client of mine this morning, which I'm really proud of her for doing. But
Yeah.
she told me, she's like, I don't talk to anyone about money, and even beyond that, I don't talk to anyone about how I feel about
Oh,
anything.
wow.
I'm like, well, what about your husband? Like, is he aware of the situation? And she goes, yeah, he knows that we're in this position financially, but he
Mm,
doesn't know that I feel like a failure. He doesn't know that I'm exhausted and overwhelmed, and he doesn't know that I feel like a fraud and all these different types of things. And I'm like, why not?
mm,
And she just goes, well, because I'm scared to tell him. But also I think that if I were to open up to someone, that it'd be like a sign of weakness. And
mm,
I got us into this, and I need to be the strong one to get us out. And I'm like, so what are you doing with me right now?
mm.
And she's like, well, I'm opening up to you. And I'm like, and how
Wow.
does it feel? And she goes, I feel like I can do this. And I'm
Mm,
like, yeah,
wow.
maybe your husband deserves to know,
Yeah.
right? It's so interesting how our mental health, our emotional health, and just the good standings of those
Hmm.
really does affect our money, and even how our money affects those things in response to it as well.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I always tell everyone all the time, Bernadette, I always say that money is not everything, because it's not.
Yeah.
But it does affect everything. You know, it does
Yeah.
affect our mental health and our emotional health. It does affect our marriage. It does affect our kids. It does affect where we choose to live, where we choose to work. It affects our physical health, even, you know, like with the quality of food that we can buy, right?
Mm,
And everything affects our money too.
mhm.
Everything affects our money as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is it everything? No,
Mhm.
but it does affect everything, and everything affects it. So it's one of those areas in life, it's one of the few areas in life that if you are able to get your money in a really amazing spot, it's
Yeah.
like a rising tide lifts all boats. All the other areas then have the potential to also rise as well.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where I'm like, I wish that people realize that more, so that
Hmm.
they'd be more focused on it, and they make it more of a priority, and they'd realize that, like, hey, if I get this one thing,
Hmm.
then maybe I can have it all.
Hmm. Yeah. 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 And
So
I also wish, I know some people in the healthcare system are doing that, asking the right questions, because not
hmm
everything is what it seems to be. Someone may come in of just some breakdown, mental breakdown. And if it's a psychiatrist, they're going to go in the mental side of things. If it's a counselor, at times they tap into personal life. But at
hmm
times I feel that people who need the help, who are having breakdowns, they put a wall in between who can access their debris, their success or failures.
hmm
I think it's to open up. It's
yeah,
like we all deal with the same stuff. We all need money to buy what we need. Doesn't matter what country, culture, language you live in. It's just to open up to talk about it and to make it okay.
And to allow it to go into a direction that maybe you never considered either. Even that person I talked to today, we opened up a conversation about her spending habits.
Yeah.
And eventually the conversation led to her telling me about a core memory that she had when she was 9 years old, crying in the car with her mom, and her mom telling her to suck it up.
Mm.
And it's like, how are those two things connected?
Yeah.
Well, if you saw the pattern, you'd see exactly how they're connected, you know? And it's like, even just being open enough to exploring that kind of thing is oftentimes where those keys to unlock those doors of potential really do lie. It's really important.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Do you think inflation will go down at some point, or is it going to keep rising? And because it's not looking good in so many places.
Yeah, it really depends on what is going to be happening over the next 12 to 18 months, I'd say. It could continue to keep rising. And, so I don't know what it's like in Canada where you're at, but in America, they're saying that it's around like, 8.5 to 9%, something like that.
Wow.
It's way more than that. It's way more than that. That's just what they're reporting. But it's not based off of like, if you were to look at the data, you'd be like, well, what about this data point that they're not including? It's actually probably more like 30%. It's pretty bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is,
Uh, but it really just depends on like policies, with the government, with the Federal Reserve, what they decide to do, and of course, different companies as well. They did a study, they did like an investigation on grocery stores in America, and they basically proved that like a lot of grocery stores are price gouging right now. And they're taking actions to help combat that. But there is one grocery store in America that is called Aldi's, and for the summer, they're cutting their prices by I think like 30 to 35% for the summer. And their intention was, hey, we're going to cut these prices by 30 to 35% across the board to help out American families. So if more companies just decided, hey, we're going to take less of a profit margin because we've been making record profit margins for the last 4 years, then that definitely will help, but it's just one of those situations to where there's a lot of different variables in place. Even with like the housing market in America, there's a lot of talk about crashes and stuff like that. It's not going to happen because we just don't have enough inventory. There's way more people trying to buy than there are houses available. And because of that, the housing prices keep rising, while the interest rates also keep rising because of inflation. So, there's a lot of things that could be done. It's just a matter of will they be done, depending on like who's in office and what the companies will do and stuff like that. So that's a long answer for saying I don't really know.
Yeah.
But I hope so.
Yeah. It's really bad here too. I know my rent went up and everything is just going up and up and up and up. And I think it will take all of us to say enough. And I think we can communicate without bringing anyone down, tearing their reputation down. And there are respectful ways of getting what we want and need. And I hope those people who are in power, because they're like us, they have a home they go to and they go to the grocery store, that they find the compassion and understanding to not let people suffer if they don't have to.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really good thing to remember that like, so what you said was it will take everyone to say enough, right?
Yeah.
And I agree, but the best way to do that is to hit them where it hurts, which is
Yeah.
their wallets, right? And you have the power to do that with your own wallet, right? So like what you need to do and what we need to do is we need to find those companies that align with the everyday person's values. For example, like Aldi, the grocery store I shared,
Yeah.
And if every single person in America, let's just say, if every single person in America only shopped at Aldi's because Aldi's cut their prices, what do you think that the rest of the grocery stores are going to do?
Hmm.
They're going to be like, we can't compete with this. We need to lower our prices. And then all of a sudden, the grocery prices went down across the board. And
Yeah.
there you go. There's inflation coming down, right?
Yeah.
So vote with your wallet. That's like the best way to
Yeah.
create that change, especially in the
Yeah.
world that we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What do you want anyone who's listening to this very amazing episode to get from it?
That's a really good question. I would say that I would want you to I would want you to step into a place of empowerment,
Mm,
of being open to having a conversation around money, because it's one of those things that, like, you're never going to improve anything if you don't first talk about it. And that
mm,
can be your health, it could be your career, it could be with your relationships, and it's
mhm,
definitely with your money too. So don't make money a taboo subject with your family or with your friends. Maybe even being open to talk to someone like myself who can
yeah.
help you, who can help support you and help guide you. I'm not saying that you need to reach out to me, but I mean, like, you can if you want to. But just, like, be open to that, and step into that place of, hey, like, I'm done living this way, and
Mm,
I'm ready to finally experience the life that I've not only wanted but actually do deserve. And I
yeah.
know that you can get there. I see it every single day with people having all different types of situations, circumstances. They rise above it every single day. So that would be my message to you, is just take that first step, talk about it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I have two questions for you as we wrap up. The first one I asked every guest, and they all have different answers, which is fine. The first question is, what is the meaning of life for you?
Mm. The meaning of life for me would be investing into my relationships, um, and having the time to do that. So whether it be like my family, my friends, my relationship with God, I think that relationships are the most valuable currency that we ever have. Um, Without them, nothing else matters. So relationships is the meaning of life for me. And just leaving an impact in those relationships that is meaningful, that is going to last well beyond I'm gone.
Mm,
So for me,
yeah,
that's the meaning of life.
yeah, nailed it.
Thanks.
Wow. Wow, amazing. My last question for you, where can my listeners find your business, connect with you, and work with you?
Yeah. So you can find me if you were to just type in Sizemore Financial Coaching into Facebook. You can find me there. Sizemore is just two words put together, size more. Um, but if you're wanting to learn a little bit more, I am offering you guys a free webinar. So the
Mhm,
webinar is called Master Your Money,
mhm,
5 simple shifts to rapidly eliminate your debt and amplify your wealth. And
mhm,
you can find that. It's a 45-minute webinar. So, nothing too long, but enough that, like, you get some good value from it.
yeah,
You can find that by simply just typing into your web browser,
mhm,
www.masteryourmoney.support, not .com, .support, because that's what I want to give you. So masteryourmoney.support, and you can just sign up for that, watch
mhm.
that. And if you watch it and you're like, I need to talk to Cody, then
Yeah,
hey, there's going to be a button there that you can talk to me too. So
yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Well, Cody, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you do. It's needed. Keep up the work that you're doing because
thank you.
there are so many people waiting on the information and education that you're bringing to them, especially the next generation. So keep it up.
Hmm. Thank
Good
you.
job.
Appreciate it. And thanks for having me too. This was a really fun
Always
episode.
come
So
back again.
absolutely.
Yes, thank you.